because we all only have 24 hours in a day. And you guys mentioned, well, you're a busy man, right? How do you do it? And it's by building a team, right? The same way, and that's part of that network building is you need to build team members. And, you can't make a job so difficult that someone can't step in and replace that role, just like the Team Sark role or, the Fox role. You have to make it to where there's set roles and responsibilities, and then you're just putting another person in place because life happens. People move, people, change jobs. Maybe it's not the right fit for some people.
Hi, I'm Daniel Bell.
This is Patrick Brennan.
And this is AfterSOF. Today, our guest was Andrew Chavez.
Andrew was a Green Beret in 7th Special Forces Group, Halo qualified, and with several combat tours.
And today he's doing mortgages. He does mortgages out of Southwest Missouri. Springfield, Missouri is the area that he works in. And we had some pretty good conversation where Andrew talked about how he got into the industry he is currently in. We talked a little bit about community, both him moving back to the community he's from after the military, as well as the larger special operations community. And he went in a little in depth on his faith and how that drives him to be the fuller person he is today.
Yeah, it's a good show. Looking forward to getting your feedback. Enjoy.
So, Andrew, in discussing a lot of what makes us do what we do after we've gotten out of the military, specifically the special operations community, we take a look at that, what that has done to us, the impact it's had on our lives. So can you just give us a little introduction, tell us a little bit about your history, where you come from, and how it's kind of influence the industry that you're in right now?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ash Grove, Missouri. It's a small town, I think, of 1,100 people. Graduating class, I think, was 64 people. I joined the military in 2009, so a year after high school. I ended up joining the military. I remember going to the recruiter and I was like, hey, I want to do something in technology. I want to work with computers, radios, something that, is going to give me a good career after the military. So, when I first joined, I wasn't thinking, hey, I want to go in and be SOF right away. Ended up going through basic training, AIT, got to my first duty station, and I quickly realized that the Army wasn't what I thought it was. I felt like I was a little bit more motivated than other people. I showed up generally on time. I did pretty well on PT. I guess I wanted something more when I first joined, and I ended up meeting a first group guy when I was stationed up at Fort Lewis, or JBLM at the time. And he was, we did some jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai together, and, I used to dust the floor with him. So I was like, well, if this guy can be soft, then maybe I can do it. He was a Delta. So it wasn't like, I was dusting the floor with a Bravo or anything, yeah. So anyways, we started talking and he's like, you should go try it. So I ended up going to selection in 2011 and got selected. I can remember that I was from a soft arms, wasn't a combat MOS. So I didn't even know how to molly my ruck. So I just looked like a bag of trash. I just remember walking, like hindsight 2020, I was like, man, my pouches were all flopping all over my molly ruck and everything, all the other x-rays and, all the combat arms guys, they look pretty well put together. I didn't know how to pack a ruck. I just didn't quit. And that's one thing that I'm very strong-willed. So it kind of pushed me through selection. Ended up getting selected. Got to group in 2013 down in Florida with 7th Group, and did a couple combat rotations. I got to do one OEF. I got the tail end of OEF, and I did an RSM. Spent the majority of my time on a Halo team, so I got to be a military freefall jump master. I was also a JTAC, and I actually got to control for one of my combat rotations. So that was a really cool thing, and those skills that you kind of learn from being a JTAC, from being a military freefall jump master, they carry over because there's a lot of chaos in both of those things. And so when you come over, after SOF, working in mortgages or working in, structuring real estate deals, a lot of times the calmest, coolest guy in the room can think a little bit more clear and negotiate a little bit better. So, dealing with, a 20 airplane stack in combat, I mean, if you can deal with that, you can deal with, realtors like Dan.
Yeah.
when they're stressed out.
you might have to give me some tips and techniques on that, but that's pretty incredible. We didn't have that when I was in 7th Group. I was getting out probably when you were just coming in, and we didn't have that program. But I had heard about where they're taking SF guys and turning them into JTACs or going through the training. Is that something are they still doing that, or what was that training like?
Yeah, from what I from talking to my buddies, they still have the program. I was one of the first, couple hundred guys to go through and to actually get a rating, get qualified, and then go down range and control. And, the Air Force, they have their TACP program, and then what's the CCT program? They have their CCT program. Those guys are phenomenal. And it's very hard for Army guys just because we don't get the reps and we don't have the training program to be as proficient as they are. So a lot of times what you would see is you'd have a CCT or a TACP, they'd go down range and they would control the entire time, and they didn't want, the Army guy touching it. Fortunately, I had I had good proficiency. So the CCT I worked with was amazing. He would let me control, because that's what it was. Like, well, if the Air Force guy will let you control, then you control. So I got to do a lot of controls. So it was a really good experience.
Yeah. You think about the evolution of that, right? The guys that went in Afghanistan first, right? The 5th Group guys that did the invasion, they were doing air combat control, right? On a different level, right? They wouldn't have the full complexity that it is or was, middle towards the end of the war, but they're doing it based on fully on an ODA, and then it evolves into, right? It makes sense to have a little bit of redundancy where you have a CCT and then have, at least one guy on the team that knows a little bit or how to do it, just in case. But
yeah, it clarifies that communication and kind of brings you into that fuller picture of the task force you're in.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
So in that skill set, what can I ask you, what did you start off as in the military? What was your...
So I started off as a 25 uniform, which is it's kind of like an all-around communications guy.
Okay.
So it translated really well to being an 18 Echo. I went in as an 18 Echo, which in Special Forces, that is a Special Forces Communications Sergeant. So we handle all aspects of the communications, radios, computers. That's why when we were a little delayed and I'm trying to get into my Zoom meeting, I told you, I immediately went into 18 Echo troubleshooting. Like, man, do I need to restart the computer, close out the program? I went into incognito mode on Google Chrome. Okay, maybe it's something with the browser. And then... Yeah.
Then you learned that, humans... It's all about humans are more important than hardware. It's just that our humans are a little slow.
It's hot down here.
We haven't caught up with technology yet.
So I don't think that's where that soft truth applies.
And we're medics too, so
what is technology? I don't.
I can open someone's airway and plug a hole, But so. It's been interesting us getting to know each other, because you and Patrick knew each other from the... Yeah,
through a third friend. So a mutual friend of ours, Gary, I had originally went through... We knew each other when I was in the military. He had a little bit longer journey back to SF, but and I guess you guys went through the course together.
Yep.
Yeah, So Gary, that's a whole different story, but yeah, we got connected, and we were talking about mortgages. Gary, I think you were trying to recruit Gary into mortgage industry, and yeah. Anyways, it's a small world, and then finding out Andrew is from Missouri and Daniel's, from that area as well, and
yeah. So it's like looking at how small our circles are in the special operations world. Whether you're a Green Beret, whether you're a Navy SEAL, whether you're a Ranger, or like me, a Night Stalker, because of the schools we go to, because the operations that we're part of, we end up having this really close connection with a lot of people, and we don't realize that. So you connected me, and I'm like, he lives in Springfield, Missouri. I did my undergrad in Springfield, and half my family lives there. So and I think both my brothers have worked with you now, getting mortgages. So
yeah. And you have mutual friends that go to the same church, right? You guys are like, yeah. I mean, it's bizarre, but very bizarre, but
awesome. I mean, so that's the great thing about our community is we have these close connections that help us to rely on other people. We say, okay, we know where they come from, we know their values, we know what's important, and so this is someone I'm going to connect to and open myself up for business. And you're able to help each other out quite a bit through that. And I guess that's really what drives the question of why did you get into mortgage after you left the Special Forces? What was it that drew you into that, and how was that work out with your development there in the Springfield, Missouri community?
Yeah, so my path to owning a mortgage company is kind of an odd one. But in 2014, I was still in the military, and I knew that there was a good chance that I wasn't going to do 20 years, right? So, I started trying to plan out what I could do, how I could invest to have something, have some residual income to where when I got out of the military, I didn't have to go defense contractor. I didn't have to, nothing, and there's nothing wrong with doing that because I did do that for a little while, but I didn't have to follow the normal post, military career. So in 2014, I ended up opening a tax preparation, little small tax preparation shop with my dad, who was retired at the time, semi-retired at the time. I convinced him out of retirement. He had some experience in accounting and running companies. So I said, hey, let's start a tax preparation shop, something that I can come back to, and I can kind of grow as I want. So that was in 2014, and that was while I was still in. So I used to take leave during tax season when I wasn't deployed, and I would come back and I would do tax returns, right? Sounds super fun, right? There's sacrifice in anything, right, to get you where you want to be today. So when other guys were, on booze cruises or, whatever, going out of Florida, I was sitting in an office doing tax returns. Super fun stuff, but I enjoyed it, right? Because I was building something that was going to be mine. So I did that up until 2018. 2018, I left the military, and I recognized an opportunity that, hey, we have a lot of clients. I think we're somewhere around 700 clients at the time between tax preparation. We had added accounting and payroll. We'd grown to about 5 employees. So nothing super large, just a nice small accounting, your local accounting shop, right? So, I realized there was an opportunity to cross-sell insurance products. So commercial, personal to our tax clients, because we had, very close relationships with them. We understood the numbers on kind of where we needed to hit. So we opened up an insurance agency. I went and I got licensed in PNC, life and health, everything. Cold called a guy and said, hey, I'd like to sell insurance for you for a little while. Here's my plan. He said, okay, yeah, I'll give you a chance. You write this much, you can open your own agency. Ended up writing that much in like the first couple months. And he said, hey, okay, here's your own agency. So ended up opening an insurance agency, and it's small. We started off with one insurance agent writing for us. Then we just slowly started growing up. So that leads to the mortgage, right? So trying to give you the full backstory, the kind of the financial services picture. So in 2019, I had a guy working for me. He came to me. He's like, do you know how much these mortgage companies are making right now? It's like, no, how much are they making? He's like, they're making like, 3 to 4% on each deal, right? Sometimes even higher, off your loan amount. I said, well, that's pretty good. I like those margins. I understand, any kind of industry like that, whether it's insurance or tax preparation or even mortgages, it's all based off of rules, right? And they have these publications, kind of like the military, right? You have FMs, right? You have field manuals, you have Army publications, right? Well, what makes you a good soldier a lot of times is if you're in those publications. Well, I like to think I was a good soldier, and I read a lot. I read a lot of FMs. I read a lot of, Army publications, because in there was the answers to everything on how the Army was going to grade you, and over time, how they figured out the best way to do things. Now, there is still innovation in every industry to include the military, so you can't just say, okay, hey, this FM says to do it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. Same as in the mortgage world, same as in preparing taxes, but it's very similar. So 2019, I was like, hey, let's establish a mortgage company. Let's do it slow. Let's see what happens. So work through with the Department of Finance to get a mortgage company created. First part of 2020, we went real slow, right? We had one loan officer. We were doing like one deal a month, right? We were like, let's figure out how this is supposed to look, right? Because there's a lot of growing pains when you don't have someone to teach you how to run a mortgage company. So we did that for about, it was 6 months, 7 months until we were kind of comfortable. We read a lot of guidelines, right? I'm huge on guidelines. We have guideline quizzes. Like I'd like to think head to head, I can go guideline to guideline on anyone. I got another guy in my shop who's even better than me. He's got a 20-pound brain when it comes to guideline. And I swear he's memorized the 4000.1. Anything FHA, it's just like, oh yeah, here's your compensating factors. Here's how it relates over to DTI, just things like that. So middle 2020, I was like, hey, let's go full steam ahead. We're ready. Let's start growing. So I jumped in. I started originating. I started getting out, with local realtors, kind of explain to them how we could do things better, right? Patrick's in the industry, and a lot of times realtors, Dan, you're in the industry as well, you hear, hey, we got great rates, we can close fast, right? That's the number one thing everyone tells you. And you're like, great, you're the 50th lender this week that has told me that exact line, right? So what else can you do? I brought to Missouri things that Missouri didn't have, right? So the Midwest, I got the pleasure of living on the East Coast, the West Coast. I lived down at the beach in Destin for a little while. The Midwest is a little bit behind on some things. I think, Dan, you probably know that. Not always a bad thing. I like the slow part. That's why part of the reason I came back here. But we brought some products here to Missouri that nobody else had. Like we can go down to 500 FICO through one of our investors. We can do no credit score. And that's on FHA, VA, things like that, people that couldn't do. We started doing non-conforming products. So, someone can't get qualified on self-employment through their normal 2 years of taxes. Okay, hey, we'll take your last 12 months of bank statements. We'll do a bank statement loan. We were doing investment products like debt service coverage ratio loans. So we just brought, I think we have a little bit over 400 programs right now that we offer. So for one company in one spot to be able to offer all those programs, it was easy to go out and sit down with the realtor and say, here's what I can do, right? And they said, okay, well, yeah, here, I'll give you a shot with this. And we performed, we did really well. And in my first year originating, I originated somewhere around 75, I think just over 75 million, ended up being a top 1% broker in the US. And we just found a lot of success. So we started growing, pretty rapidly. We're up 17 loan officers right now. And we're just growing. It's great. Even in this rapidly, this rate environment we're in. Patrick probably can tell you the bloodbath that happened on Friday and Monday in the mortgage bond markets.
Yes, Daniel's very excited about that right now. He's about to close on his house.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
it's become personal to me.
But we're on the purchase side. We even during the refi boom, we were doing 80% purchase and 20% refi because a lot of lenders started ignoring realtors. And to me, I'm like, why would you ignore people that are going to feed you? Yeah, it's great. Refis are awesome right now, but you're going to need them sooner or later. And we were able to establish a lot of good relationships with people that are just getting ignored because they were so busy doing refis. And I get it. Hey, I'm going to make 50, 60 grand this month doing refis, but in the future, let's talk 2023, 2024. I'm going to need them to even make 10,000 a month as a loan officer or 5,000 as a month. So
yeah, that was one of the things when I got in the industry January 2020, and that, I had some great mentors that were like, hey, look, rates are really low. You're new to this. Go get purchases, right? And that was, some really good advice for me, and how Daniel and I met, and I just focused on that sort of part of the industry. But so in like 4 years time from when you got out of the military, are you still doing all the other products? Are you still doing insurance and accounting? You still own
So
four
just
businesses?
this last year, I ended up selling the accounting and payroll and tax company to my brother, Stephen. So Stephen, he worked as a corporate accountant for Louis Dreyfus. They're like one of the largest commodity trading firms in the world. And then he came back and I think he worked for me for 2 years. And the plan was always to sell it to him. I kind of wanted him to have his own thing. He went out, he got the degrees for it. And then so we passed it on to him. I still own the insurance company. We're at 3 agents right now. It's small, but it's good. It provides other streams of income, kind of building that residual income. And then I run the mortgage company, and then I'm a partner in several real estate investment groups as well.
I mean, you've been busy, man. I mean,
I've been very busy.
Yeah. So I always ask people this too. Like, I mean, you were super motivated, had a bit of a plan, even before you transitioned. I mean, what was the feeling on the team when they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna take leave, go back to Missouri and do taxes"? Did you get?
They probably thought I was crazy. That if you guys were like, "Yeah, that's cool," but at the end of the day, I try to not care as much about what people think that aren't going to be in my life long term, right? There's always going to be short term people that you work with that are, or maybe you're in their same social circle that, they're going to give you feedback. And to me, I always listen to it and I try to get some value from it, but I don't really care at the end of the day, as long as I have a plan and I'm confident in that plan. Yeah, you're always going to have people that push back like, well, you're wasting your time. You could be having fun doing this. Well, there's a sacrifice to almost everything in life. If I heard a saying, it was like, if you want to have an easy life, you got to do hard things. If you want to have a hard life, you can do easy things, or something along those lines. But unless you're given a silver spoon in life, and even then, you gotta hustle, you gotta grind, you gotta outwork people. And that's kind of one thing that I brought from SOF is you look at me, and Dan, you've met me in person. I'm a 5'10", 190 average looking dude. You look at my teammates, they look like Captain America coming through the door. They're 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds, benching, 400 pounds or something like that. And the reason I got the opportunity to be on a team with those guys is because I outworked other people, right? I outworked, I didn't quit. So there's a lot of sacrifice to achieving anything good in life.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And it sounds like just kind of what you're talking about in your journey through entrepreneurship, just implementing some of the skills you learned in SOF. Maybe you had it all along, but we've seen this a little bit in some of the stuff that Daniel's doing on the social side is you found opportunity in Missouri in the mortgage industry. You found the opportunity and you went after it, right? I think that's sort of a skill set, whether you're in Afghanistan or South America or Africa, right? In order to build community and build relationships, you've got to go find something that is needed and then figure out ways to solve that problem, right? And it seems like you kind of flipped the script on that a little bit and use it to your advantage to make a profit, but you're also providing a service that wasn't there before. What other skill sets do you think you've utilized from your time on a team into now being an entrepreneur?
So you kind of hit it on the head right away. As a Green Beret, we are masters of unconventional warfare, right? And a lot of people don't understand what unconventional warfare is, or even conventional warfare. But one of the biggest things in unconventional warfare is building networks, right? So, anytime you're doing any, kind of, network building, whether it's in a foreign country or in your own backyard, you identify centers of influence, right? So just utilizing some of that network building, utilizing centers of influence, you can use it in business and, you can become very successful just the same way you can use it in war. Because you're still trying to win a populace, whether that's with a mortgage product or to, govern a country a certain way. So, and all this is, open source stuff. So you can go read the unconventional warfare handbook. But yeah, I think it's great. The biggest thing I took away from SOF is building networks. And in business, you have to build networks. So I would say that'd probably be the biggest thing I took away from it.
And one of the unique things about what you've done is you went back. Ash Grove's a little ways away from Springfield, but you went back to an area that you were familiar with, where some of us, like both Patrick and I, are not from San Antonio, but that's where we do our business. However, we go back to that whole center of influence, especially for me coming from Army medicine. This is the center of the universe for Army medicine. And then Patrick, I guess you married into the community as well.
Yeah, I married into San Antonio. Yeah, it's I love the food, Tex-Mex. I'll take it any day. But yeah, I mean, I think I had a little bit harder transition, right? I didn't fully take into consideration how important that network building was, right? Like, I didn't apply it. Like, I knew I'd applied at my job in the military, and I was, thought we did really well at that. But when you get out, you kind of, I don't know, maybe it was a little bit of ego, definitely ego, maybe a little bit of like sort of that special treatment you get, right, when you're wearing the green beanie. So yeah, it took a while for me to put that on the forefront of my. Now that's all we do, right? I mean, that's why we started the podcast. That's why I enjoy doing mortgages, because I'm networking, I'm building community, I'm building relationships, and I think if we emphasize that a little bit more on the transition process, right? People would have a smoother time when they get out.
Yeah, know the community. I think that's the big thing. I moved back to Springfield after I'd gotten out, but I didn't grow up in Springfield, and I didn't have a specific path, and I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people can will help them is know who you are, know what your community is, and connect with that community. Because so many times people are like, hey, I'm finished with this, and they don't say, is that support there that I need? Like for you, you had familiarity and family. I had family, and I was familiar with Springfield, but that wasn't my home. And so there were those things. And then education. So this is another thing that we talk about a lot, and we have lots of friends. You see it on their LinkedIn, Green Beret MBA, right? We see that all the time. So your education or whatever you've done, can you talk a little bit about your path within that education? Because I think a lot of people feel like, oh, hey, I've got the GI Bill, I need to do this, and we focus so much on that education when sometimes maybe it's getting a license versus getting a degree.
Yeah, so I finished my education. I was fortunate enough to finish it while I was in the military. I did a year at Missouri State prior to joining the military. SOF had a program where you get your associate's degree through Fayetteville Technical Community College, I believe, while I was there. So I said, hey, you want to pay for a free 2-year degree while I'm in? I had to do, I don't even remember, it was like 7 or 8 online classes. Then of course, the Q course counted for a whole bunch of that stuff. The Q course is the qualification course for special forces, for those of you that don't know what the Q course is. And then after I got to a team, I finished out the finance degree online. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do with the degree. I just knew that, hey, I need a baseline of understanding, micro and macroeconomics and just, how to read a balance sheet, how to read a P&L, how to put one together. So, I would say that education is very important. Education doesn't necessarily mean a college degree, though. Like you kind of said, hey, sometimes it's getting a license, sometimes it's getting a mortgage license, sometimes it's getting a real estate license, whatever that might be, where you can utilize that to generate a little bit of income or just to obtain some knowledge in an industry. If you're thinking about getting into real estate investing, it's probably not a bad idea to, do a little bit of studying on a real estate exam. So yeah, there's a ton of different ways that you can get education, but I do think that it needs to have some form. I mentioned guidelines earlier. That's a form of education, right? And that's self-study. That's going out there and educating yourself on all these different rules. So, however the education looks, I think you're 100% correct. You do need to have some of it before you get out there and try to be successful after SOF.
Yeah. Yeah, and you probably see a lot. I mean, you see the MBA on a lot of folks. That's a big thing now, and more power to them. You also see a lot of folks that are getting degrees while they're in service, right? If they do a full 20-year career, they've probably gotten their bachelor's and master's in some sort of, national security or, and that's great if you're going to continue in that career field, but sometimes it might pigeonhole you into, we've got this advanced graduate degree, but then you're going to transition out into the world. And how do you take all of those skill sets that you've gotten from a career, whether it's leadership, management, just planning, strategy, those types of things, and now you don't really have a degree that allows you to go into the business world, so to speak. It's not lateral. But then on the other side, folks are maybe having a little bit of ego like I had when I got out and just saying, well, I've got an MBA and I'm a Green Beret. I should be vice president of Chase Bank, or whatever it is, right? Like there's two sides of that coin. So,
but that's also, we see a lot of this within the SOF community. We see people who transition into some sort of contracting work, or they get a job with one of the organizations that has worked with their unit, or whether it's technology or just some sort of service. And we don't stop and go, oh, hey, I can be an entrepreneur. I was just talking with my wife's an active duty officer, and we were just talking about this yesterday, how some people become so dependent on the system, right? So what do I do? She was talking about this retiree that's been in the Air Force for 28 years. And she was asking him, what is it that you're going to do now? And he said, I don't know. I always looked forward to retirement. I always looked forward to this. And for those of us who are not career military, we step back and we go, okay, I'm looking forward to when I get out of the service because I'm going to go do this or I'm going to go do that. But what is that? Are we going to work for someone, or are we going to take our talents and develop something new? And there's a huge population of special operators that are going into they're being entrepreneurs. They're taking a look like Andrew, and they're saying, hey, in my spare time, whether it's investing in real estate and flipping houses or whatever, or being the guy who during block leave goes up and does taxes. In Missouri in April. But everybody has to stop and take a minute to figure that out. And one of the things Patrick and I talk about all the time is it's not regret, but it's how can we help other people in the community right now, young Rangers, young Green Berets, whatever. What body of knowledge would you try to pass on to them as far as preparing themselves for after special operations?
So, there's two things that I would recommend. And one is a big thing of being a Green Beret, and that's planning, right? So there's, anytime you're in SOF, planning is a huge part of having a successful mission. You need to plan for if everything goes correct, and then you need to plan for all the contingencies, right? So, whenever you're doing your military decision-making process, you look at all the different contingencies that can go along with, okay, well, what if we hit an IED here? Or, what if we take a casualty here, right? You look at all those things and all those, courses of action that are going to branch off of if something goes wrong. So, one thing I would say, anyone that's getting ready to transition out of SOF, have a plan, right? And the plan doesn't have to be, okay, I'm going to get out and I'm going to flip 20 homes this year. I don't consider that a plan, right? So especially if you're the main breadwinner coming out, have a plan on how you're going to replace your income, right? And if you do have the entrepreneurial spirit and you have some ideas, well, that's where that hustle and that grind part. So you'll work an 8-hour job, and then guess what? Go home and work another 8-hour job on your side hustle. And don't step away from that, that main job until your income is almost to on your side hustle is almost to the same amount as your main job, especially if you're the main breadwinner. So I would say, number one, have a plan and plan for contingencies, right? Set a solid plan to, okay, when I transition, I'm going to go be a manager at Target, or I'm going to go, I'm going to work construction and I'm going to make $20 an hour. And plus with my, VA benefits, I'll make this much, but really I want to flip houses. So I'm going to use the construction experience to, maybe go out and flip a house, one house in my first year. And then, whatever that looks like. But the biggest thing, if you're transitioning, have a plan. And it doesn't have to be a perfect plan. Just have a plan on how to replace that income. And then from there, you can plan your contingencies. Okay, well, if I start this business and it fails, well, how does that make my income look? Or I need to take a startup loan. Okay, well, can I still cover that through whatever job that I'm going to take? So I would say number one thing I could recommend is have a plan and plan for contingencies.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talk about entrepreneurship a lot. What do you think about sales, right? I mean, sales is this, it's got a stigma, especially in special operations, right? I never wanted to be in sales.
Because the hype, right?
Yeah. I was, I wanted to plow through doors and be a hard charger, that kind of stuff. Like, I never saw myself as sales. But when we talk about the skill set, building network, building community, I mean, that is sales, right? Do you see that stigma a lot? Did you have that? You had a different path. You kind of had a plan set up in place, but like, how do we break that stigma to folks where the easiest path maybe to transition to entrepreneurship is taking a sales role, right?
Yeah, I think knowing how to sell is very important. In SOF, we do a lot of sales. You might not realize it. So anytime you're vying for that number one mission, you're doing sales to the battalion commander, the group commander. You're putting together this awesome presentation. You're showing them all these different, schools that your team has, all these qualifications, all the experience, right? And then you're presenting that for the mission, or even if it's on just an ODA level, you're doing your MBMP. And you're trying to pitch to your team sergeant and your team leader, like, hey, here, let's use this plan because this plan is going to be the best plan. So, sales is very important. And sales is a big part of every job, even though you might not think it is. You can always be, trying to sell your boss on something. Hey, I need a raise, right? Because you're trying to further your position. So, if you're moving into, starting your own company, sales is a big portion. But sales, to me, and this is why I tell my new loan officers, it's just being consistent, right? A lot of people have a lot of anxiety about, being told no, right? And you mentioned ego earlier. Well, being told no to me, probably for like the first week, I was like, man, I've never been told no this much by this many people, right? But after a while, you just get over it. Like, well, it's their loss, right? Hey, I know if you truly believe you have the best solution to a problem, like I believe that our mortgage company has the best products in town overall, then it's easy for me to go sit down with, Dan or someone, say, hey, here's what I can do, right? And here's why I can do it better. And here's how I can help you more, right? So sales is being consistent and just conveying that value. Don't, if you get told no the first time, okay, well, there's, in Southwest Missouri, there's 5,000 realtors here, right? So I can get told no, 4,000, 900 times in my opinion. And I was like, if 100 of them tell me yes, then I'm going to be a top, 10 producer in the United States. So, just being consistent in sales and not letting that anxiety, kind of overwhelm you, taking on the stress of the situation, which is something that we can learn from SOF, going through combat deployments, is just keeping that calm, cool demeanor and just being consistent. Hey, if I need to call a new realtor every single day, and I have time for it, that's what I tell my loan officers. Do you have time to call a new realtor and explain to him how you can provide value? Well, yes. Well, have you done it? Well, no. Well, why not? Well, I don't know enough, right? Or I don't, there's always this I don't. But a lot of times if you look inward and you're just like, hey, I'm going to do it. When I first started out, I had, no idea really what I was doing or what I was talking about, whatever. I just said, I know those realtor people, they're going to send me clients and I need to tell them why. And then I just met with, them over and over and over until I was like, oh yeah, I know that, because you guys all ask the same questions. So after a while, I was just like, yep, he's going to ask me about the underwriting part next, or, whatever the case might be. so
I just send him to Patrick. I'm like, I'm like, hey, I know this guy.
Right.
And like, I'll let him deal with that. I'll take care of the contract. You take care of that with him.
Well, I had a funny story. So we lived in Southern California for less than 2 years, my wife and I, and we started a little business out there, and I won't say what it was because it was very humbling experience, very niche product, and I had it all planned out. We had a great name, and we had all this. The business was planned out, and I had a couple clients. And then I realized, after those first couple clients, like I needed more clients, right? And I was like, oh, this is sales. This is actually, it doesn't matter how strong of a plan you have. It's really who are you going to get clients from, right? Like how do you sell the product? And, we were fortunate that we got out of that situation pretty quickly and moved back to Texas. But yeah, I mean, sales is a big part of it. So, I would say that was my biggest failure financially and in the business part of it. What has been your biggest failures as you've transitioned into this new role?
From a financial standpoint, you're going to have failures on single projects. But, I've been pretty fortunate that I've spread my risk out between most of my ventures that I'm in. I'd say, I learned a lot on the operations side. There's always a lot of small failures on the mortgage side. So, hey, how does our processing team get a file from submission to clear to close, right? And we had different processes that I would say weren't the best, and we're always changing them, right? Some of our team members might not like that part of working for me because I'm like, it's every week I'm going to our loan operations manager. I'm saying, hey, we need to change this. Hey, let's implement this. And until we have that excellent process that people just love coming back for, I would say it's largest single failures. I think, when I first started out flipping houses last year, I was part of a small investment group. We flipped 11 houses. And on one of them, the contractor, we didn't have the follow-ups that we needed on the contractor, right? Got a bid. The contractor got busy, so started sending guys that had no idea how to spell remodel, much less do it in there. And, fortunately, I ended up making, I don't know, it was like $20,000 on the house, right? But it was a house that I should have made, $50,000 to $60,000 on. So that was one of, I would say one of the failures. But what I learned from that was like, okay, I need to stay on top of my contractors, or if I can't do it, I'm going to put someone in place that can do it, because we all only have 24 hours in a day. And you guys mentioned, well, you're a busy man, right? How do you do it? And it's by building a team, right? The same way, and that's part of that network building is you need to build team members. And, you can't make a job so difficult that someone can't step in and replace that role, just like the Team Start role or, the Fox role. You have to make it to where there's set roles and responsibilities. And then you're just putting another person in place because life happens. People move, people, change jobs, maybe it's not the right fit for some people. So, really building that team, will kind of help you avoid a lot of those major failures. I haven't necessarily, had anything large like a bankruptcy or a failed business or something, but I try to take things slow at first and kind of feel it out instead of, dumping kind of all my eggs into one basket.
Yeah, risk mitigation or risk mitigation, however you want to say it. Yeah, that seems to be a big focus. So, in the development of your community, since you moved back to Southwest Missouri, what would you say is one of the biggest things that helped you to not only with your job but personally to settle back into the community, because you were gone for quite a few years?
Yeah, Settling back into the community, I would say, well, one of the most important things was getting back into church, right? So I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without God's help, and God's blessing. And I've been very blessed since I've moved back. And a large part of that is because, during my time in Special Forces, I wasn't necessarily walking with God how I should have been, right? It's easy to get pulled into a lot of different temptations and stuff that you experience, when you're traveling and you feel like you're the biggest, baddest thing on the planet. So I was very fortunate enough. I had a very good friend that, I did a mortgage transaction with. And it just kind of all started from there. He said, hey, let's go grab some lunch. So we went and grabbed some lunch one day, and, we kind of had the same conversation. Well, what do you do? What do you do besides mortgages? And I said, well, I like to spend time with my family. I was like, what do you do? He's like, well, I like to be with my church. I like to build community. I like to bring, people to Christ. And he invited me to church, and I ended up putting him off for several weeks, and then one Saturday I was like, hey, I told my wife, let's go check out the church. It's probably a good thing that we get back in church. And I walk in, and I kid you not, I think it was I can't remember what they call it, Vision Sunday or something like that. And they were talking about mortgages. And I was like, man, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So getting back in church, and finding that peace in my spiritual life has just done amazing things for me. So I can't talk enough about how that's made me a better person, a better father, and a better businessman. It's just kind of, relying on God.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. You say they were talking about mortgages. The church that my wife and I have started going to here in San Antonio. It's when we had visited a couple times, and then we went in right after Tim and I had gone to Ukraine, and they said, hey, we're raising funds to help this church in Springfield, Missouri. It's a Ukrainian church, and it's your church. So, so we have all these, these little things that are reminders to us that, hey, this is important. This is part of ultimately who you are, and these are the values that help you to achieve, what you set out to do. And we can't do that without community. We always focus on the special operations community with the podcast, but that community, our communities, extend out further than that, and we've got to have something that keeps us grounded in who we are and what we do. Mm-hmm. And so you putting that focus on faith is definitely important, and it seems to. So you got back involved with your church, what, 4 years ago?
With Connect, we started going there. Let's see, it was January or February of 2020, I believe.
Okay.
So no, it was 2021. So very, very recently, we started getting back into church full time. We had went on and off. We kind of bounced around churches. Never just really felt, like a home church. Yeah. But some of the people up there at Connect, it's a really good community. They really care about people, and a lot of churches, same, like I said about mortgage companies, fast closing, great interest rates. A lot of churches say, hey, we do a lot of things in the community, right? But to actually see that carried out has been awesome. Just a lot of really non-judgmental people that are welcome people from all backgrounds. They understand people are imperfect. That they've fallen off before, and to just try to bring them back to Christ. I have yet to see a church like it. So we've been, my whole family's been very blessed to be a part of that church.
Yeah, definitely.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So I think that's bringing us towards the end of this conversation about how you've been able to step back into your community, and you've taken what you've learned in the community, and then you've seen these other needs within your own life, and you've been able to re-engage, and that has ultimately built more business for you. So it's not that your focus is number one on, hey, I'm the biggest and the best, like you don't have that little green beret on anymore. But you're able to see what's important to you. And I think those experiences definitely drive that home to us as individuals as we go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I've experienced something in the past, and I'm going to build off of that, and then I'm going to stay true to who I really am. Mm-hmm. And in our conversation, that's what we've seen with you, Andrew, is you're like, hey, you reevaluate who you are, and that seems to help you to grow in the direction you need to grow.
Yeah, you've redefined yourself, right? We tend to focus on that, hey, I was a Green Beret, or hey, I was Special Operations, even though it was in the past. For me, it was 12 years ago, right? Like,
yeah,
it's still present to me every day, but I need to continue to redefine myself as a husband, as a father, as a someone in the mortgage industry, continually redefining yourself and not just being stuck on what you did, a decade ago. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of the success. And that, obviously you've done that. You've refocused yourself. You're not, Andrew, the Green Beret Mortgage Company in Missouri. You're just a phenomenal mortgage broker in that area.
Yeah.
And person, right? Like, that's a big thing. A lot of the folks, we've been sharing this podcast, you're the fifth guest, I think.
Fourth guest, fifth episode. Yeah.
And, we get a lot of feedback on LinkedIn, guys who have transitioned or are getting ready to transition. And this information is going to feed people a lot of good stuff. So
yeah, definitely. Hey, I want to thank you personally, Andrew, for all your help and for jumping on this call with us today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me. I'm super excited. I actually need to go back and watch a few of the other episodes. I tried to start one, and then I think it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and it was just it was a long night. So I was like, I'm gonna push this off. So I gotta get in and watch the rest of the episodes. But I really appreciate you guys having me out.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
All right, take it easy, guys.